I'm Kevin Davis, and this is the Catholic Family Podcast, and I'm joined by my dad. I imagine everyone knows him by now. We've done many shows together, and today we are going to talk about something that we both found really interesting. We actually saw this, both of us watched this today for the first time, but it's been in the news for the last day or two. Really in the news. It's really interesting. I've actually watched this on ESPN, or the commentary on this really kind of reverberates throughout many different channels, and that is the commencement speech by Harrison Butker at the Benedictine University College in Kansas. I think college maybe. I think it's a small little college in Kansas. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, your mom and I have actually been there.
Okay, interesting.
And it's a beautiful. It's a small college, but beautiful college. It's got a very extremely ugly new modernist church there, but there's also a preserved traditional classic beautiful small church there as well. So it was a fascinating place to visit.
And he, so it's a funny thing that Dad, you and I are both Denver Broncos fans.
Right.
I was born and raised in Denver, so this is a team we've rooted for decades. And so Harrison Butker plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's our rival, so we instinctively root against him in terms of just on the field action. But he's a really good player. Unbiasedly, he's a really good kicker for a really good team. Which again, in football terms, we don't like, but in terms of a human being, we've learned more and more over the years. I shared this with a couple of priests in a chat today, and one of the priests sent back to me a picture of Harrison Butker, next to each other. It showed him kicking a field goal, and next to it serving at the Latin Mass as thurifer.
Oh, wow.
So he had the thurible, and he's dressed fully in cassock and surplice. And it's really a really neat thing. And again, that's what we're going to talk about today. We don't have a ton of time. I've got to record a podcast right after this one. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to try to play kind of what we want to do is play part of his commencement speech and then comment on it and then just kind of go like that. There's a lot to comment on. It's a fantastic speech. I highly recommend everyone to just go watch it in full. You might enjoy that better than our commentary. That's fine. We will do our best to attach that link in this podcast. If we don't, just Google it, YouTube it, Harrison Butker commencement speech. You will certainly find it. So
let's
absolutely worth your time. And here we go. We'll start with Harrison Butker again, Kansas City Chiefs kicker.
You witness firsthand how bad leaders who don't stay in their lane.
Sorry, I should have mentioned that I'm starting a little bit into his commencement speech, like 30 seconds, just to save a bit of time. He just pretty much said, "Hi, I'm Harrison Butker," pretty much.
Can have a negative impact on society. It is through this lens that I want to take stock of how we got to where we are and where we want to go as citizens and yes, as Catholics. One last thing before I begin. I want to be sure to thank President Minnis and the board for their invitation to speak. When President Minnis first reached out a couple of months ago, I had originally said no. You see, last year I gave the commencement address at my alma mater, Georgia Tech, and I felt that one graduation speech was more than enough, especially for someone who isn't a professional speaker. But as President Minnis used his gift of persuasion and spoke to the many challenges you all faced throughout the COVID fiasco and how you missed out on so many milestones the rest of us older.
Dad, I'm going to stop this real quick. I'm not going to even share. I'm not going to go back to us, but I just think it's interesting that he calls it COVID fiasco. Can you imagine that 2 years ago?
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. It's like, what? COVID fiasco?
Yeah.
What?
He'd have gotten banned for saying that 2 years ago.
Exactly. We would have too. It's
Right.
it's amazing the way things change, and it's something that we see again. We'll comment on that maybe on another podcast about even Jerry Seinfeld, who is a self-proclaimed Jew, New York Jew, coming out against cancel culture, etc. Pretty interesting. I think you're starting to see a real major shift. But this is this one's pretty extreme in that case, though.
For people have taken for granted. While COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it's not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of order.
Again, Ted,
I gotta break it. Yeah, I gotta say,
just saying IVF and stuff is just pretty incredible. It's like, whoa, that's not a very common topic.
Well, and there's one of the things that I so appreciate about the speech is the way he uses a lot of language we use, and I think it's proper language. Degenerate, okay, and a lot of what he's talking about is degeneracy in its
Right.
purest form. He he um he used the word ordered and disordered,
Yeah.
in a couple times. Right, you'll see that in the speech, and I think that's a perfectly proper, well thought out Catholic view of things, that things were either ordered or were disordered, were generative or were degenerative. And yeah, I mean, just the language I think he's using was fantastic.
Well, and I think we need to clarify that, yeah, everyone knows, I think by now, who we are. We are, quote unquote, Sede Vacantis. We believe that the Pope in Rome now is not the Pope, and it hasn't been since 1958. But, and I think Harrison Butker is a member of the Novus Ordo, yeah, etc. But I think that we got to remember that we can't just be, what's the word, exclusive. It's not like
Right.
we're part of this club, so we're not going to comment on anything, or we're not going to talk to anyone, or that's ridiculous. So I mean, let's remember that, though, yeah, he doesn't have everything right. Listen to what this guy says and tell me he's not on the right path. I mean, I
Yeah.
think
Oh, he's on the right
absolutely.
path. Yeah.
And there's so much that we can learn from him. I mean,
Yeah.
even though, again, he doesn't have all the steps. He hasn't quite gotten to the final conclusion of where we are in terms of theological. I shouldn't say opinion, but you know what I mean. In theology, but in terms of opinion and philosophy, he's dead on. Really, really
There's,
good.
there's a term we used to use out on Twitter X that basically was extra sede nulla sanctus. Outside of sede vacantis, there is no salvation, and it's a
Right.
mindset we have to stay away from. We have to and understand. Even Pope Pius XII, as he defined the church, who is in the church is basically anybody who maintains, the doctrine whole and entire, the Catholic faith whole and entire. And I think you'll see that his speech here is so thoroughly, completely Catholic. You can't. I don't think any of us can look at him and say, "Oh yeah, he's outside the church."
Amen to that. All right, let's go back to Harrison Butker.
By a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic. This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it. These are the sorts of things we're told in polite society to not bring up. The difficult and unpleasant things. But if we are going to be men and women for this time in history, we need to stop pretending that the Church of Nice is a winning proposition.
I think that's an interesting place to stop too. I think it's one of those things we've heard, weirdly enough, lately, from people like Jordan Peterson, who is, yeah, I don't think he's an atheist, but maybe he's an agnostic. I don't even know what he is. He even
Well,
admits that he doesn't know what he is.
yeah.
But it's interesting that he understands this stuff better than most Catholics, at least quote unquote Catholics. And I think it's again, is what Harrison Butker here is saying pretty much. Hey, just because you call yourself a Catholic doesn't mean you are one. Really.
Yeah. Well, and I think that gets to a bigger issue that I was going to talk about at some point today. That we're seeing emerge societally a new generation of thought leaders, and the thought leaders are not. I mean, we'd love to say, hey, yeah, they're all traditional Catholic, and they all say the Pope is not the Pope, and yeah, we have our thought leaders in our movement as well. But even in society more at large, you've got Jordan Peterson, like you said, Vivek Ramaswamy, Tucker Carlson. Donald Trump's kind of the tip of the spear in this whole thing, and yeah, these are not purely Catholic voices, but at the same time, there are deep issues of natural law, of morality, all these things that dovetail with the Catholic faith that are starting to come to the fore, because I think that we've so forgotten them for so long that now I think this new generation of voices is starting to find them again.
And I've seen here in Europe, I've met several young men who have come to the faith through politics. So they start out, as whatever, nothing, or Lutheran or, but they've discovered that, okay, the world is crazy, something's wrong. And they kind of just, through common sense, through logic, through rational thinking, they come to the conclusion, okay, something's wrong. Okay, where is the logical conclusion with politics? And then they come to eventually the Catholic faith. And it's an incredible thing, because they can just see, okay, this is where the world is, and this is where the world should be. And that's an incredible thing. And it's something that I think Harrison Butker kind of talks about here in his commencement speech to the Benedictine College. We'll go back to him.
Must always speak and act in charity, but never mistake charity for cowardice. It is safe to say that over the past few years, I've gained quite a reputation for speaking my mind. I never envisioned myself nor wanted to have this sort of platform, but God has given it to me, so I had no other choice but to embrace it and preach more hard truths about accepting your lane and staying in it. As members of the church founded by Jesus Christ, it is our duty and ultimately privilege to be authentically and unapologetically Catholic. Don't be mistaken, even with the church, people in polite Catholic circles will try to persuade you to remain silent. There even was an award-winning film called Silence, made by a fellow Catholic, wherein one of the main characters, a Jesuit priest, abandoned the church and as an apostate, when he died, seen grasping a crucifix, quiet and unknown to anyone but God. As a friend of Benedictine College, His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron, said in his review of the film, it was exactly what the cultural elite want to see in Christianity: private, hidden away, and harmless.
And that's something I got a couple comments on that. Okay, yeah. First of all, Bishop Robert Barron is a joke. He's a total sham. He's someone who occasionally get things right. He gets things right occasionally. He can be occasionally kind of conservative, but he's also a total loon. I'm sorry, maybe that's being too harsh, but he is not yet. Sorry, Harrison, my friend. No, please. Bishop Pipperunas, find someone else more conservative, for goodness sake, than Bishop Barron. Oh my goodness. Right. But it's an interesting point, because I actually watched that movie years ago. And it's awful. It truly, and at the time I remember because I think I'd even heard from Catholics. I don't remember traditional or not. They're like, hey, this is a great movie, great Catholic movie. And I watched it. It's like, what? It was awful. And it really is. In the end, it's just, it's exactly as you said. It is a priest who's going in search of another priest who had apostatized to try to convince him to come back to the faith, pretty much. There were two priests. One of them ends up being martyred, essentially, or killed. And then the other one, he gets caught. And then in the testing moment where he could choose between martyrdom or apostasy, he apostatized. And then in the end, the magic moment, the punch line. They show him with the cross, privately held, and it's like, come on, that's not what I wanted. I just don't even understand that from a storytelling perspective.
Right.
I don't want to see a hero who's just this little, I'm this little baby who, give me a martyr. Like this other priest who died trying to save these. I don't know if he was a martyr, I suppose, but in the movie, he goes and tries to save these other people who are being killed, and was very brave, and that's, I don't want to see some little wussy priest who gives up in the end. What's the point? It's weird.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And I think what Harrison's getting at here, and very right, he didn't call it by this, but it is actually a heresy, if you want to call it that, a sin that's known as Americanism. And I used to think that Americanism had to do with some kind of hyper nationalist and think that America was the greatest country in the world. Americanism is actually a sin of hiding your faith in public because your country is not Catholic, and so it's priests not wearing their priest's garb in public. It's not doing the sign of the cross when you're at a restaurant. It's things like that. That's actually Americanism, and what he's addressing here is exactly that. We can't fall for this Americanism thing, because what's going to happen is, over the course of generations, we decided that we're going to be Catholics quietly and not let our light shine to the world. And guess what? The enemy's going to run us over, and that's exactly what's happened.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's again, that's why I appreciate a guy like him. He mentioned that before. He's saying, hey, even though he's a football kicker, he kicks a ball for a living,
Right.
which sounds really ridiculous, but he's good at it, and he gets millions of dollars for it. But he's understood that he is put in the limelight because of what he does, and because of that, he is given a responsibility, and he's taken that, which is
taking it.
Which is a good thing. Yeah.
Catholic faith has always been countercultural. Our Lord, along with countless followers, were all put to death for their adherence to her teachings. The world around us says that we should keep our beliefs to ourselves whenever they go against the tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We fear speaking truth because now, unfortunately, truth is in the minority. Congress just passed a bill where stating something as basic as the biblical teaching of who killed Jesus could land you in jail.
That's a whole nother topic. Anti-Semitism, even under Trump, could get pretty sketchy.
It could be, yeah. I mean, Trump's made strong statements to that effect. That's going to be a totally different discussion. He's made strong statements to that effect that worry a little bit, yeah.
But make no mistake, before we even attempt to fix any of the issues plaguing society, we must first get our own house in order. And it starts with leaders. The bishops and priests appointed by God as our spiritual fathers must be rightly ordered. There's not enough time today for me to list all the stories of priests and bishops misleading their flocks, but none of us can blame ignorance anymore and just blindly proclaim that that's what Father said.
Yeah, I appreciate what he's saying, and I think he's absolutely right. Obviously, talking about Novus Ordo priests and bishops, but he also said, we got to stay in our lane. I'm a layman. Yeah, this is where you got to be. I don't know. You got to be a little careful, but yeah, I get it. That's the position he's put in, right? When you are a member of the Novus Ordo, what are you supposed to do? You can't just obey. You can't if you want to be faithful, you have to say, hey, priests and bishops, hello, what's going on? But then you can't just say, hey, I'm going to stay in my lane. It's kind of, you see the issue there.
Yeah, his is a very quiet and respectful form of recognize and resist. So, I mean, I think he resists, but he does it in the most tame way. And I think you and I, of course, we see the situation and say, well, these are heretics. You can't be heretic. You got to leave the heretics. You got to just leave, like our Lord told us in Matthew 24, I think it was. And he's not seeing that. So, but I mean, at the same time, he is calling out the issues for what they are. He's not drawing our conclusions yet, and maybe he never will. But at the same time, I mean, he's on that road.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, what more can we ask? And sincerely, people watching this should pray for this guy, because it's something we've talked about before. It's like, hey, if we need some pieces to fall, if it's Vigano, if it's Taylor Marshall, if it's Bergoglio, which some people think, I don't know how that would happen, a miracle, but we do need some things to fall if you want to convert a big chunk of people. And who knows, maybe it's someone like Harrison Butker. I think that's absolutely possible. So let's definitely pray that he makes the final steps to realizing that, if you're starting to criticize your bishops and priests, and I'm sure he would criticize the Pope, you're starting to have issues. But anyway, let's get back to what he has to say.
Because sadly, many priests we are looking to for leadership are the same ones who prioritize their hobbies or even photos with their dogs and matching outfits for the parish director. It's easy for us laymen and women to think that in order for us to be holy, that we must be active in our parish and try to fix it. Yes, we absolutely should be involved in supporting our parishes, but we cannot be the source for our parish priests to lean on to help with their problems. Just as we look at the relationship between a father and his son, so too should we look at the relationship between a priest and his people. It would not be appropriate for me to always be looking to my son for help when it is my job as his father to lead him. St. Jose Maria Escriva states that priests are ordained to serve and should not yield to temptation to imitate lay people, but to be priests through and through. Tragically, so many priests revolve much of their happiness from the adulation they receive from their parishioners, and in searching for this, they let their guard down and become overly familiar. This undue familiarity will prove to be problematic every time, because as my teammate's girlfriend says, familiarity breeds contempt.
Yeah, and it's interesting, real quick, I know people are watching this and saying, oh boy, Saint, Jose Maria Escriva, and he was, the founder of Opus Dei, as far as I understand it. It's not someone we put a
He's
whole lot
highly
of
regarded in some Sadie circles. So I
right.
mean, I wouldn't disregard him for sure.
Right, exactly. I wouldn't disregard him. I'm not saying we value him as a saint. He is a Novus Ordo saint, but again, just calm down. Take the quote for what it is. And again, I know. Again, people are saying, "Oh, well, this guy's quoting Jose Maria Escriva." It depends on which side of this you're on. But it's
He's making a good point, though. I think in
right.
terms of it's not our place to go and correct priests. In fact, I saw a really good. I won't call anybody out on this. I saw a good discussion on X the other day where somebody was talking about something controversial, and then one of the priests, a CMRI priest, came in and set him straight and kind of took the other side of the argument. And this poster said, "Hey, I am not going to debate a priest," and he called one of the the priests from the other side of the argument in to see if he would engage. It was a perfect response. I mean, it was perfectly done by the layman because it's not our place to call out priests or to question them or anything like that. That's one of the things I think is so beautiful about the priests we have in our traditional movement, and I would say especially the CMRI, is that you do have you do have a certain a friendliness. I don't know if I'd say familiar, a friendliness with them, and they're wonderful people, and you can sit down and have drinks with them and have a good discussion or whatever. But at the end of the day, there is still that distance that comes from a father-son type relationship, from a clergy layman relationship, and they do have that authority that is theirs, and it's given by God.
Right, exactly. And as you said, hey, you can't. I mean, it's a whole nother issue, but let's not treat our kids like they're our friends either. I think that's really
Right.
a lot of where we see this come from. Is hey, let's all be buddies.
Yeah.
St. Jose Maria continues that some want to see the priest as just another man. That is not so. They want to find in the priest those virtues proper to every Christian, and indeed every honorable man: understanding, justice, a life of work, priestly work in this instance, and good manners.
And it's something too. I don't think he even takes it far enough. I mean, we call them another Christ, right? An alter Christus. Right. I mean, I mean, he's definitely on the right track. But I think I'd take it even a step farther. I mean, the priest really is Christ on earth in many ways. And if he doesn't act that way, then that is heavily
the angels in heaven bow to priests because they hold the Christ in their hands.
Exactly.
It is not prudent as the laity for us to consume ourselves in becoming amateur theologians so that we can decipher this or that theological teaching, unless, of course, you are a theology major.
Real quickly, got to shout out Father, Father Tepeta in Denver of the Catholic Wire. He had a great video about that. I think it's maybe 10 minutes long, and he stacks up these books way above his head, these books that he had to read in the seminary and as a priest. And it's remarkable what you have to learn in order to have even a basic understanding of theology, which
30,000 views on that, Kevin. I
awesome.
think it's extremely encouraging that video got 30,000 views.
Yep. No, highly recommend. Maybe Dad, we'll have to remember to link
Let's
that one
see if we
too.
can link it, yeah.
Definitely, guys, go check that out. If anyone tries to argue theology, ourselves included, go watch that video. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
We must be intentional with our focus on our state in life and our own vocation. And for most of us, that's as married men and women. Still, we have so many great resources at our fingertips that it doesn't take long to find traditional and timeless teachings that haven't been ambiguously reworded for our times. Plus, there are still many good and holy priests, and it's up to us to seek them out. The chaos of the world is unfortunately reflected in the chaos in our parishes, and sadly, in our cathedrals too. As we saw during the pandemic, too many bishops were not leaders at all. They were motivated by fear of being sued, fear of being removed, fear of being disliked. They showed by their actions, intentional or unintentional, that the sacraments don't actually matter. Because of this, countless people died alone without access to the sacraments, and it's a tragedy we must never forget.
Whew. And Dad, real quick, I mean, if you wanted me to stop at any point, just let me know. But that if there's anything that we've seen, and I've heard from priests that we've talked to, this has been the biggest red pill for Novus Ordites who said, okay, enough. We're going to go find something else. And a lot of people went to the Eastern Orthodox, unfortunately, and many people went to Sedevacantist priests because they saw that they were the ones who were still doing everything they possibly could to get into a hospital during COVID, while
Right.
Well, again, I've told this story many times. We went to the tomb of St. Clare in the middle of COVID in Italy, and they literally had a sign that said, don't, they said, wear a mask, keep social distance, and don't pray. They literally had a little girl with her hands folded, X'd out. It's like,
Wow.
That happened, people. That actually happened. I saw it. I was there. I witnessed that. And they're literally telling people during a pandemic not to pray.
Yeah. And meanwhile, on our side, we had priests that were going to nursing homes that you had people dying, and they were calling up the Novus Ordo priest, and the Novus Ordo priest was, I'm not playing golf today or whatever it was. And, our priest went out and took care of them, even though they weren't part of their flock, Right. And then, and I know in Omaha and a place like that, we had Father Borja going through the rules with a fine-tooth comb and looking for any legal loophole around it. And so Bishop Everyone's was adamant that we would follow the letter of the law, but at the same time, any loophole we could find, we went through it. And so the funny story real quick, we during the Omaha local, I think it was the mayor, was a Novus Ordo, kind of doesn't like Bishop Everyone's. And so she basically set the rule of no communion. You can't have a communion. And so what they were doing in Omaha during COVID was having mass in Omaha, and then communion. They would go and do a communion service right across the border in Iowa. And and people would literally travel from Omaha to Iowa to have communion. And so, but that was the links that our clergy were going to make sure that the needs of their people were taken care of.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that's what it's about. And again, I think that's what Mr. Butker here is trying to say.
As Catholics, we can look to so many examples of heroic shepherds who gave their lives for their people, and ultimately, the church. We cannot buy into the lie that the things we experienced during COVID were appropriate. Over the centuries, there have been great wars, great famines, and yes, even great diseases, all that came with a level of lethality and danger. But in each of those examples, church leaders leaned into their vocations and ensured that their people received the sacraments. Great saints like St. Damien of Malachi, who knew the dangers of his ministry, stayed for 11 years as a spiritual leader to the leper colony of Hawaii. His heroism is looked at today as something set apart and unique, when ideally it should not be unique at all. For as a father loves his child, so a shepherd should love his children too. It goes even more so for our bishops, these men who are present-day apostles. Our bishops once had adoring crowds of people kissing their rings and taking in their every word, but now relegate themselves to a position of inconsequential existence. Now, when a bishop
I got to say real quick, Kevin, the piece I think he's missing here is that I think it's because of the pollution of their doctrine, and he did call out the ambiguity of the Vatican II doctrine and how the whole no sort of church has become ambiguous. But I think when he really makes that last leap and says, oh yeah, okay, because the religion that our bishops are preaching is not, or the faith is not the faith handed down by St. Paul and our Lord and the original church. It's not the same faith. That's when I think you realize that's why these bishops are not getting any regard whatsoever. It's not because they're personally reprobate. Some of them are, but most of them aren't. But their doctrine doesn't inspire that in people.
Right. And again, he mentions this at the end too, but we have to remember too that almost certainly they don't have the true sacraments, right? The sacraments have been changed, so they don't have the graces of the true sacraments, so they don't have the grace in order to literally lead their people. It's one of those things that always strikes me when you if you think about the marriage, you're married. If you're actually married as a Catholic, you have the sacrament of matrimony, and you have the graces from that sacrament. It's the same as if you're a priest, a true bishop, you give the sacraments. If you receive the sacraments of confession and Holy Communion, etc., you actually receive grace, like actual grace.
Actual grace, yeah.
And I think that's something that, again, I think we just kind of forget. There's like, well, that is an actually strengthening thing in our society. And if you lose that, and if you break that, if you damage or you probably destroy the entire process, you're going to have issues. And that's something.
Insanity ensues, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. People don't consider enough.
Puts out an important document on this matter or that. Nobody even takes a moment to read it, let alone follow it. No. Today, our shepherds are far more concerned with keeping the doors open to the chancery than they are with saying the difficult stuff out loud. It seems that the only time you hear from your bishops is when it's time for the annual appeal, whereas we need our bishops to be vocal about the teachings of the church, setting aside their own personal comfort and embracing their cross.
It really, he's harsh, man.
Yeah,
It kind of blows me away.
Yeah.
He's pretty much just saying, hey, the bishops are in it for the money, not for saving souls. Like that's wow,
that's brutal.
brutal. It's brutal.
Yeah, and it's not
Our
wrong.
bishops are not
No, yeah, absolutely.
politicians, but shepherds. So instead of fitting in the world by going along to get along, they too need to stay in their lane and lead. I say all of this not from a place of anger, as we get the leaders we deserve. But this does make me reflect on staying in my lane and focusing on my own vocation and how I can be a better father and husband and live in the world, but not be of it. Focusing on my vocation while praying and fasting for these men will do more for the church than me complaining about her leaders. Because there seems to be so much confusion coming from our leaders, there needs to be concrete examples for people to look to in places like Benedictine, a little Kansas college built high on bluff above the Missouri River, are showing the world how an ordered, Christ-centered existence is the recipe for success. You need to look no further than the examples all around this campus, where over the past 20 years, enrollment has doubled, construction and revitalization are a constant part of life, and people, the students, the faculty and staff, are thriving. This didn't happen by chance. A deliberate movement to embrace traditional Catholic values, Benedictine has gone from just another liberal arts school with nothing to set it apart to a thriving beacon of light and a reminder to us all that when you embrace tradition, success, worldly and spiritual, will follow.
That's pretty interesting, Dad. I think that you would agree with me that we've seen that also in our own parishes, in our own groups, whatever, congregations, etc. That it does. People gravitate towards it. I mean, if you see a group of nuns walking around, or a priest in a cassock, or even in a collar, it's not just like a natural respect. There is this like this. I think there's this yearning for tradition. People want that. People are so. It's really interesting. It's another topic we have to talk about. Jerry Seinfeld commenting on the ridiculous stupidity of artificial intelligence. But I think that's the more we get into that, the more we get away from reality, and the more we get into this artificial intelligence and computerization, et cetera. I think people are really going to more and more absolutely desire tradition and truth, and you don't get more. Of course, the heart of that is the Catholic faith, of course.
Here's a crazy little anecdote that we had from when we were up there visiting this college. That, like I said, the church itself looks like a bug. Maybe we'll see if we can put it on the screen here in post production. And it's horrible. You can go inside; it's very modernist looking. But we're kind of looking around, and I was taking some pictures. And I think I'm dressed down. I don't think I was wearing shorts, but I definitely was dressed down. I look up on the altar area, and there's kind of an area there for monks. And I go up and start taking pictures, and all of a sudden, something moves, and it's like, whoa, what's that? And it's just jolted back because it was a monk who was in prayer, and he kind of looks back at me, and he's not disdainful or anything. But then I focus in a little bit more, and there are 10 or 12 Benedictine monks up there, and obviously they were praying their office or whatever it was, and so I mean, Novus Ordo or not, I mean, these are still men that are dedicating their lives to God, and they're going to bring down that grace that at least, maybe not from the true sacraments, but at least from dedicating their lives to God, setting themselves apart, and being part of a religious community.
Yeah, I just saw another post by Mario Dirksen on Novus Ordo Watch about how there's a group of poor Clare sisters who now have left Rome and have said that there's been no true pope since 1958, and the unction to do it, I suppose, was due to the Rome not letting them buy a new property or sell a property. It's pretty bizarre, but it's kind of like, well, you just see there's so many of these groups and so many people that are just this close. Right. Yeah, they're this far away from being, no, okay, enough. And I'm not saying that they are wrong. They should be there now, of course, but it's easier said than done. I was born into it, especially for me. It's easy to say, but wow, there's so many people that are close, and that's an awesome thing. And we went to a convent in where was it? Florence, maybe. one of the Tuscan cities in Italy, and it was a closed convent. It had an incorruptible sister. Oh boy, see, I don't even remember. Sister Magdalene, maybe Magdalene. I don't remember. Well, an incorruptible saint. It's terrible. I don't remember that, but it was a totally cloistered convent. So I mean, totally closed. And so the sister who talked to us literally was behind a wall that we couldn't see.
Oh, wow.
You had to open a grate, and these were clearly sisters who were extremely traditional.
Yeah.
And so it's like, there's no. They're obviously getting graces.
You can't
they're
say
giving
God
their
doesn't
lives
love
to
them.
no, exactly. Yeah. They're giving their lives to God. I mean,
yeah.
They're not. They haven't completely realized everything. Maybe they have. I mean, I don't know, but I think again, it is closed-minded to just be like, oh, I'm not going to have these poor, pathetic people. No, I mean, good grief, they're giving their lives to God in a cloistered convent. Anyway, back to Harrison Butker.
The reporters at the AP could not have imagined that their attempt to rebuke and embarrass places and people like those here at Benedictine wouldn't be met with anger, but instead met with excitement and pride. Not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it, but the true God-centered pride that is cooperating with the Holy Ghost to glorify Him. Reading that article now shared all over the world, we see that in the complete surrender of self and a turning towards Christ, you will find happiness. Right here in a little town in Kansas, we find many inspiring lay people using their talents. President Minnis, Dr. Swafford, and Dr. Zimmerer are a few great examples right here on this very campus that will keep the light of Christ burning bright for generations to come. Being locked in with your vocation and staying in your lane is going to be the surest way for you to find true happiness and peace in this life. It is essential that we focus on our own state in life, whether that be as a layperson, a priest, or religious. Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024, you are sitting at the edge of the rest of your lives. Each of you has the potential to leave a legacy that transcends yourselves and this era of human existence. In small ways, by living out your vocation, you will ensure that God's church continues and the world is enlightened by your example. For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment.
It's going to get spicy.
This is where he gets in trouble.
Just warning everybody, ladies, you might want to close your ears because this is going to get controversial real quick.
You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now about to cross this stage and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell that my beautiful wife is...
I love how the baby's crying as he says that.
I know, that was funny, yeah.
Isn't it awesome in the background? There's no accidents with God.
Yeah.
Isabel would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, Homemaker.
Whoa,
that's you crying. That's not me crying.
Oh man, it's unbelievable, and I love it. Yeah, there's so much to love about that. I mean, and I know again it's controversial, and that's the thing he's getting killed for. But it's like the way he's breaking up about it. That's clearly by far the most emotional he gets in this speech. Yeah. And I love how he starts with saying she converts to the faith. That's just like he's like, she converted to the faith. She married me, and then she became a homemaker. And it's like in that order. Mm-hmm. And that's so well put and so well stated. And I think he clearly says too that that's the goal, right? I mean, the goal for women should be to be, okay, if you're going to be religious, of course you can be a nun, but otherwise, to be a homemaker, to be a mother, and to take care of your children. Doesn't always work that way. Sometimes life, makes it hard, and you have to go and work. And I think he understands that. Everyone understands that, but that's a really beautiful sentiment that people just don't say anymore.
No, as a society, I mean, we've really lost the art. We've lost the appreciation for homemaking, what it means to make a home, and it's something that we talked a little bit about this. Your mom and I that in the modern day, husband and wife both have a job, and you're taking the kids to soccer practice, and you're doing all this stuff. Well, you get home, there's no art left to. I mean, you're how are you going to make dinner? How are you going to clean up after dinner? You're going to have to share it. I mean, the wife can't do it all, and she can't have. I mean, she Lisa's making a podcast right now on waffles and instant waffles versus the real thing, but it's an art. It's an art, and for a woman to embrace that is properly, like he says, is properly ordered. And I think that's where she's going to find her true happiness. So I got to say one more thing. I haven't watched this. One of the things I really appreciate about this, he starts breaking up, and then the crowd gives him a long
right.
OV.
Like, okay, get back into it, bro. Yeah, exactly. No, good crowd. Yeah, exactly. They gave him a chance to get back, but yeah, I mean, what more can you say? Really, a touching that's where he broke up, and that's what he really cares about, and that he met this girl in middle school and is still married and obviously still in love. That's inspiring. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's a primary educator to our children. She's the one who ensures I never let football.
I wonder if that means they're homeschooled. That just maybe I caught that the first time. I was like, huh, that's interesting. I assume if he's saying she's a primary educator.
Yeah, I think that's what he's saying.
Wow.
Or my business become a distraction from that of a husband and father. She is the person that knows me best at my core, and it is through our marriage that, Lord willing, we will both attain salvation. I say all of this to you because I've seen it firsthand, how much happier someone can be when they disregard the outside noise and move closer and closer to God's will in their life. Isabel's dream of having a career might not have come true, but if you asked her today if she has any regrets on her decision, she would laugh out loud without hesitation and say, heck no. As a man who gets a lot of praise and has been given a platform to speak to audiences like this one today, I pray that I always use my voice for God and not for myself. Everything I am saying to you is not from a place of wisdom, but rather a place of experience. I am hopeful that these words will be seen as those from a man not much older than you, who feels it is imperative that this class, this generation, and this time in our society must stop pretending that the things we see around us are normal. Heterodox ideas abound even within Catholic circles, for let's be honest, there is nothing good about playing God with having children, whether that be your ideal number or the perfect time to conceive. No matter how you spin it, there is nothing natural about Catholic birth control.
Boy, did you get more of a conservative topic than, I mean, where is this guy coming from? I think people don't even talk about that on this podcast. I couldn't believe that. It's like,
he's breeding like rabbits.
Is he going there? Yeah, that's amazing. Good for him.
Natural birth control. He speaks down, and the thing about it is, like, when you understand the abortion argument correctly, you understand that the reason we believe what we do is because it's actually a baby in there,
right?
And I think with the same thing with the procreation argument and birth control and all that to really understand the argument is to say that this is God's decision. It's not our decision. And so all forms, even the natural ones of birth control, except for in very unusual circumstances, you take it up with your priest. But as a normal course of business, it's God's decision.
Right. Yeah. Impressive for a kicker to appreciate, not just to understand it. It's not like he's an idiot, but just to say it. Wow.
He gets it.
It is only in the past few years that I've grown encouraged to speak more boldly and directly, because as I mentioned earlier, I have leaned into my vocation as a husband and father and as a man. To the gentleman here today, part of what plagues our society is this lie that has been told to you that men are not necessary in the home or in our communities. As men, we set the tone of the culture, and when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in. This absence of men...
I just got to comment real quickly. I think it's really interesting he says that, because I think it's absolutely true that we see a feminized culture. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's women being the problem. It's just a feminine. It's men being not
Men,
masculine
right?
enough. I mean,
Not leading, and
exactly. Yeah.
because society tells them they're second class citizens, and it's
Right.
been since their birth almost, and so yeah, I think that's what this newer generation. I think he's one that is starting to reestablish.
And in the home is what plays a large role in the violence we see all around the nation. Other countries do not have nearly the same absentee father rates as we find here in the U.S., and a correlation could be made in their drastically lower violence rates as well. Be unapologetic in masculinity, fighting against the cultural emasculation of men. Do hard things. Never settle for what is easy. You might have a talent that you don't necessarily enjoy, but if it glorifies God, maybe you should lean into that over something that you might think suits you better.
The anti-Disney message, right? That's something we talk about maybe more than anything on this podcast, is to to get away from that idea that Disney taught us since we were kids, that do what you want to do what you love, and that's a hard message, and it's something that Jordan Peterson has really brought to the fore, but also people like Mike Rowe, et cetera, and they've really shown that, hey, do hard things and you'll
Right.
pay off.
Yeah, exactly.
I speak from experience as an introvert who now finds myself as an amateur public speaker and an entrepreneur, something I never thought I'd be when I received my industrial engineering degree. The road ahead is bright. Things are changing, society is shifting, and people, young and old, are embracing tradition. Not only has it been my vocation that has helped me and those closest to me, but not surprising to many of you, should be my outspoken embrace of the traditional Latin Mass. I've been very vocal in my
real quick here. This is another one of the themes that you and I really like to touch on. I think things are changing now. They are getting worse, in terms of your Disney culture and your masses. But at the same time, I think that this green shoot of tradition and right thinking and getting back to basics and basic morality and all that is stronger than it's ever been in my lifetime, to be sure. And I think that that's a shift that's going on in the hearts of the younger generations.
And I think you see it actually with Disney. Disney has lost
Yeah.
billions in the last couple of years, partly because they don't know how to make good content anymore. But
Right.
people are just sick of it. People are just sick of it. They don't want the garbage anymore. But again, it's kind of like, again, we're talking about the movie about the priest who just gave up.
Mhm.
That's not. We don't want stories of people who give up.
Right.
Give me a hero. Yeah, and the hero can struggle and suffer and fail at times, but give me a hero who actually succeeds. Who overcomes, because that's the point, right? That's what we're trying to emulate. That's why we like movies and stories, because we want to imagine ourselves as that character. And if we want that, then we don't want a character who fails. This is pretty basic storytelling.
Devotion to the TLM and its necessity for our lives. But what I think gets misunderstood is that people who attend the TLM do so out of pride or preference. I can speak to my own experience, but for most people I have come across within these communities, this simply is not true. I do not attend the TLM because I think I am better than others, or for the smells and bells, or even for the love of Latin. I attend the TLM because I believe, just as the God of the Old Testament was pretty particular in how he wanted to be worshiped, the same holds true for us today. It is through the TLM that I encountered order and began to pursue it in my own life. Aside from the TLM itself, too many of our sacred traditions have been relegated to things of the past, when in my parish, things such as Ember Days, days when we fast and pray for vocations and for our priests, are still adhered to. The TLM is so essential that I would challenge each of you to pick a place to move where it is readily available. A lot of people have complaints about the parish or the community, but we should not sacrifice the Mass for community. I prioritize the TLM even if the parish isn't beautiful, the priest isn't great, or the community isn't amazing. I still go to the TLM because I believe the holy sacrifice of the Mass is more important than anything else. I say this knowing full well that when each of you rekindle your knowledge and adherence to many of the church's greatest traditions, you will see how much more colorful and alive your life can and should be.
I don't think we need to actually comment that much on that, Dad. I think that's
well perfectly said. I don't think I can say better.
No, exactly. And it's exactly right. It's about how we worship God, and that's the way that we've done it for hundreds of years, and it's the way it should be done. And I think if you've attended both, it's very obvious.
And it's a complete holistic ordering of who we are, and it starts with the Mass.
Exactly.
As you move on from this place and enter into the world, know that you will face many challenges. Sadly, I'm sure many of you know of the countless stories of good and active members of this community who, after graduation and moving away from the Benedictine bubble, have ended up moving in with their boyfriend or girlfriend prior to marriage.
Oh, I just love it. This guy. Yeah. He doesn't mess around.
No,
nobody talks about this stuff. I love it.
Right. Yep. Awesome.
Strong.
Some even leave the church and abandon God. It is always heartbreaking to hear these stories, and there's a desire to know what happened and what went wrong. What you must remember is that life is about doing the small things well, settling yourself up for success, and surrounding yourself with people who continually push you to be the best version of you. I say this all the time, that iron sharpens iron. It's a great reminder that those closest to us should be making us better. If you are dating someone who doesn't even share your faith, how do you expect that person to help you become a saint? If your friend group is filled with people who only think about what you're doing next weekend and are not willing to have those difficult conversations, how can they help sharpen you? As you prepare to enter into the workforce, it is extremely important that you actually think about the places you are moving to. Who is the bishop? What kind of parishes are there? Do they offer the TLM and have priests who embrace their priestly vocation? Cost of living must not be the only arbiter of your choices, for a life without God is not a life at all, and the cost of salvation is worth more than any career. I'm excited for the future, and I pray that something I have said will resonate as you move on to the next chapter of your life. Never be afraid to profess the one holy, Catholic, and apostolic church, for this is the church that Jesus Christ established, through which we receive sanctifying grace. I know that my message today had a little less fluff than is expected for these speeches, but I believe that this audience and this venue is the best place to speak openly and honestly about who we are and where we all want to go, which is heaven. I thank God for Benedictine College and for the example it provides to the world. I thank God for men like President Minnis who are doing their part for the kingdom. Come to find out, you can have an authentically Catholic college and a thriving ball program. Make no mistake, you are entering into mission territory in a post-God world, but you were made for this, and with God by your side and a constant striving for virtue within your vocation, you too can be a saint. Christ is King to the heights.
All right, I think that wraps it up, and I think the rest is just applause. I think it's again, Dad, I think we commented as best as we could through it. I think anyone just go watch it by yourselves. I think you'll see that it's a powerful thing, and he's not. What I love about it is that he's not a great orator. He's not this. I wouldn't even say he's a great writer. I mean, it's okay. He did a good job. He's I'm not saying I do better, of course, but it's not mind blowing. The way he delivers it or the way he wrote it. It's not eloquent. It's not Tolkien-esque, I suppose, but it's strong, man. It's just like, man, he's saying things that people don't say.
Right.
I love that.
And to me, his subject matter, his phraseology, his delivery, all of it was grace filled. I mean, you can sense that he was doing this in partnership with the Holy Ghost. He uses a lot of the same language that you hear our priests use on Sundays, and just the way he's wording things. And it was not over the top. It was not, but I think that it was a call. And I think so much of the success of it is you can see he's gotten a lot of accolades for it, but then all of the regular enemies are screeching over it, and I think that also goes to tell you that he really hit a nerve with it, and God bless him. I mean, I think all of us, probably what I take away from it is all of us need to be out there and figuring out what we can do to propagate the faith, to show our light, to make the world a better place, all those kind of things. And I think that we're trying to get, I mean, you keep talking about that movie where the priest, everything's silent and the priest apostatizes in the end. But I really kind of feel like we've maybe gone over. I think Dylan Mulvaney was maybe the peak, the moment of peak woke, where we're, as Christians, we're kind of cowing, and now all of a sudden, like, we're sick of this, and we're on the downhill slide now, and actually going to take action to speak our faith, speak our truth, and speak the truth, and try to be apostles to the world.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's something that, I mean, I guess the best place to start is to ask your priest if there's anything you could do. I mean, it's a hard thing. It's you got to be careful too. Obviously, if you're proselytizing, you got to make sure that you do stay in your lane, because it is something that, I mean, speaking for myself, if you start, going and preaching the word of God, and then someone asks you a tough question, you're like, duh.
You start making up answers.
Yeah, and you cause more harm than good. So I mean, that's something that I'm sure you would agree, Dad, that the first thing to do is learn your faith and learn your catechism. Really, truly go and read the Baltimore Catechism, read the basics, really learn your faith from the ground up. Learn it as a 5-year-old, because that's the most important, because that's what most people are going to ask. People are going to ask, why do you not eat meat on Fridays? Why do you wear a scapular? Why do you fast during Lent? I mean, these are, to us, it's kind of like, well, I mean, I knew that when I was 10. And it's like, but then if you start thinking about it, it's like, wait a second, why do I do that? So you really, I think that's the key. Learning about the deep theology and philosophy, you're almost never going to have to deal with that.
No, find something that you currently don't do particularly well, and just work on that, right? It might be grace before meals when you're at work. It might be dressing modestly.
Exactly.
It might be not using bad language, right? And there's so many different things that we can all do to try to escape this Americanism of not living our faith publicly, and try to actually be a light to the world. And that it's you're right. It's not the the street preaching and the shouting from the rooftops and big missives on Facebook or whatever. It really is the little day-to-day things that we currently don't do well that we can do better.
I guarantee you, Dad. I guarantee you, Harrison Butker's teammates like him. I don't know. They love him. I don't know. I'm not inside that locker room, but this is not. I guarantee you, I've witnessed this myself. If you're open with your faith and you're strong in your convictions, people respect it. I mean, people respect other people who are strong in their convictions. That's just simply that. So it's like, I think we're all afraid. It's like, oh, people, what if people know that I'm a traditional Catholic? What if they know that I have morals? And what if they know that I'm a virgin before marriage? These things that people think, oh, it's shameful. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
People absolutely respect it.
You have a brother-in-law, and I won't name him I don't want to embarrass him, but he is so good about these things. He goes into the workplace and he very gently opens up the discussions, and he does those little things that make him a shining light. And I think he's gotten 5 or 6 or 8 people or more talking faith with him, and he's actually converted a couple of them. And it's just by simply living your faith, and that's awesome. That's how you started.
But it's something that's like, if you convert one person in your whole life, I mean, what's the value of that? That's incredible. And if that's by example, making the sign of the cross, being open with people, not being ashamed, praying the rosary in public. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, having bumper stickers. These little things. They sound silly, but I think Harrison Butker mentioned it too. Be good at the little things. That is what is matter. It's going to matter. That's what's going to give you the best chance to convert people. Dad, I've got to run. I got to go do a podcast with Father McKenna about, funny enough, about the impact of dopamine on the human mind. So what do screens do to our psyche? So as everyone is watching this on YouTube, beware for the next podcast with Father McKenna. It should be a good one. But Dad, thank you very much. It's been really interesting. Thank you to Harrison Butker. Seriously, if anyone knows Harrison Butker, get us in touch, because I would love to do a podcast with Harrison Butker.
We'll do Chiefs and Broncos tickets, right?
Yeah, exactly right. He's like, just like ask him, please don't wear a Chiefs jersey. Let's just pretend you're not on the Chiefs, and we'll do a podcast.
You wear your Elway shirt.
Faith and tradition. Yeah, exactly. I bet you would respect that. But well, anyway. Dad, until next time, God bless you. Harrison Butker, good for you. Everyone, please say a prayer for him too, that that he continues to stay strong in his faith and to figure out the little things he's got to figure out, and to help lead others to truth and to God, because in the end, it's all about getting to heaven for each and every one of us. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. And hey, who knows? Maybe we'll get Harrison Butker to see it and to come on. So if you're watching this, Harrison Butker, please email me, Kevin89Davis@gmail.com. God bless you.